Okay, so we have with us Patricia Boutinard Rouelle from Nilaya Productions in Paris, France. Massimo Arvat from Zenith Arti Audiovisive, Torino, and Markus Nikel, who is a consultant for RAI and also part of a global network, global media, right? Called?
This is how I call my individual company, Global Media Consulting.
Okay, great.
It's just a brand I invented.
Okay, so I'll ask you, Markus, afterwards just to say a little bit about what you do as your role in RAI. Eh? Or maybe you could start just telling us a little bit, what is your role in RAI at the moment? And about, of course, one of the main protagonists of the whole case study, which is RAI Documentari. Just a brief introduction, and then while we are waiting for the last to come, we'll start with the trailer. So.
Okay, yes. So welcome everybody. I'm very pleased to be here. Thanks for the organizers for inviting me and us with this project. When this project was born, actually I was working still for another RAI department. Now I'm working for RAI Documentari, which is a brand new department, a central documentary unit at RAI. But I used to work for RAI Cultura and RAI Storia and RAI Scuola, which are run by a department called RAI Cultura, at the time when I was first aware of Dove danzeremo domani. RAI Documentari now is a central production unit of documentary with slots on the main channels in prime time and in second prime time. So it's the idea which RAI took a little bit from France Télévisions, that it's more efficient to have a central production unit for doing documentary, especially as documentary is nowadays, it's co-producing internationally. Most of the top documentaries have a need to co-finance internationally the production, and also a central unit would be a way to more easily commission and work with the independent industry. So that was the idea behind the creation of this department. Department is operational since I think September 2020, so not even a year, with sort of a startup situation still. RAI Documentari interacts with the channels, so the director, Giulio Giammaria, would regularly see the directors of the various main channels, and they would together decide what to produce. So RAI Documentari would receive the proposals and organize and coordinate and co-decide with the responsible editorial managers of the channels which of the proposals to go for. So it's quite a complex management situation, but I think it's a real progress, and I think this project will also show why RAI Documentari is a real gain for RAI, but also for the audiovisual industry in Italy. So that's more or less my role in with RAI Documentari. I'm part of a team of 4 people currently who are looking into proposals that come to us, that are brought to us mainly through a portal. We have an online portal where producers can enter their proposals, or of course directly, like events here, pitching sessions in Italy and in Europe, which we attend. And maybe you know some of the people that are in this team, so maybe I make the names. Fabio Mancini, who was for many years, he was the commissioning editor and responsible manager of Doc 3, is part of the team. Monica Bartoli, who is a long-standing author and editor with Petrolio, a program that was organized and created by Giulio Giammaria many years ago. And Monica Bartoli is more, let's say, she's looking on science and discovery subjects. Fabio Mancini is a more specialist on social stories and history. I myself also, I come from history more. So we have various areas which we cover. And there's another colleague, Giuseppe Rolli, who's also part of the team. He's more a journalist. He used to also to be a writing journalist many years ago, and he worked for various TV programs like the ones created by Michele Santoro. So he's more news and investigation specialist. So this is a very small team. We jointly read the proposals, we discuss about them, and then we would have a meeting with the director, with Vice Director Karina Laterza, and we would then create a sort of selection that the director has to discuss then with the networks. And if the networks agree on the proposals, we go into production. So that's for you to understand the complexity of this. But what the good side, or the real progress, is that there's a substantial increase in resources available for documentary, and this centralized unit is more easily able and capable to cooperate internationally. So we have created contacts with France Télévisions. We have done, like danzeremo domani, various projects. One about the Vesuve and the Vulcano in Naples. Massimo is the Italian producer of this. And we have a French partner, and France Télévisions as the partnering broadcaster. Again, we have a cooperation with Arte, and this is also, I think, very, very important. A bilateral understanding, and also a sort of agreement that we select a couple of projects, Arte and Rai, where both broadcasters invest on the same level. So if we say we put in 50, Arte would also put in 50. We would not probably both together complete the budget, but in a sort of joint effort at an equal level, co-finance productions. And that's another important thing. We are part of EBU Documentari, which is a documentary panel created by the European Broadcasting Union. And we, as RAI is a member of the EBU, we have a right to propose Italian stories. So we can pitch to the other broadcasters projects coming from Italy, from independent production companies. And next week we will have a meeting with them, or online meeting currently. But so I think that's a real progress. If I look at the situation like 10 years ago, where it was still more a fragmented situation. And this is also important to note. RAI Documentary is not taking away from others in RAI that are interested in documentary. So the niche, the theme channels, RAI Storia, RAI 5 and RAI Scuola, they have their own budgets and they do their own things. And the networks, RAI 1, RAI 2, they also have documentary and factual programming besides the things we do. But I think the existence, the simple existence of such a centralized unit is a real progress and helps to interact better with the independent industry and internationally.
Great. Thank you, Markus. Thank you very much. I think this introduction is needed, so we put it aside and we can understand better how the project evolved. Okay, so, dove danzeremo domani? I think let's start with watching the trailer, so that everybody can have a sort of idea who has not seen the film. The film was shown in this cinema Thursday afternoon, right? And of course, is available on My Movies to see it. So if there's interest, please go and see the film. So let's start with watching the trailer.
Dopo molte incertezze, mi sono deciso a raccogliere tutto ciò che riguarda la tua nascita, i miei rapporti con tua madre e il mio paese.
L'uomo che scrive al proprio figlio è Federico Strobino. Racconterà al bambino l'incontro con sua madre, Rima, durante la Seconda Guerra Mondiale. La storia di un colpo di fulmine tra un ufficiale italiano e una giovane ebrea di origine russa, sulle montagne fra la Francia e l'Italia.
L'ebraismo mondiale è stato durante 16 anni, malgrado la nostra politica, un nemico irreconciliabile del fascismo.
Nel villaggio di Saint-Martin-Vésubie, che conta 1 migliaio di abitanti, arrivano nella primavera del 1943 quasi 1000 rifugiati. E in tutta la zona si mormora che gli italiani proteggono gli ebrei. Quella primavera del 1943 sembra una bolla al riparo dal mondo. Ed è così anche per i rifugiati di Saint Martin, che si divertono, ridono, amoreggiano, imparano delle canzoni italiane, sentono suonare un pianoforte, a volte per la prima volta dallo scoppio della guerra.
Gira, rigira, biondina, l'amore, la vita, godere ci fa. Quando ti vedo piccina, il mio cor sempre fatichetta. Gira, rigira, biondina, l'amore, la vita, godere ci fa. Quando ti vedo piccina, il mio cor sempre fatichetta.
Okay, great. So let's start from the beginning. Patricia, yesterday when you were talking to me about the project, you said that the filmmaker had the intention of making a film, a fiction film, and then she did her research and she discovered something that she didn't know existed before, right?
Yeah. Well, at the beginning, at the very beginning, it was a personal story, as you know. She told the story of her grandfather, who, but maybe you want to tell the story. Oh no, you will tell the story. So I think it would be better if he started by the very, very first story, because it's the beginning of it. Please, tell it.
Well, yes. Yeah, I met Audrey Godon, who is the director and the author of this film, and to send greetings to you. Unfortunately, she cannot be here, but I met her at Hot Dogs in 2018, and this was a very special meeting because I was part of the Italian delegation. We were there like 20 or 30 Italian producers and media people like me. It was, as always, it is the case, we were like a family. So we were staying a lot together after the screenings outside, having a cigarette and talking about the films or preparing next meeting. And there was this young woman who apparently was very interested in getting in touch with us. And we talked together, and I understood she's French, but she spoke quite well Italian. And so after a while, I asked her, well, how is this that you speak so well Italian? And she told me the story of her grandmother and her grandfather, who was a Jew from Paris, who, as the trailer also introduced you, was one of the many Jews that went into the zone occupied by Italy in 1942 to escape the Nazi pogrom. So the Nazi German occupators, they took all the Jews from France and brought them to Auschwitz and to other places to kill them. And for Jews in France, it was more safe to be in the occupied zone by Italians, because the Italians, in a way, were not as anti-Semitic as the Germans. And her father was in this area. Her grandfather was in this area, and she tells the story that he was on a train, and the train enters the station. He was in front of an Italian officer, and this Italian officer, when they enter into the station, they notice that outside are German soldiers, and they are looking for Jews. So her grandfather is terrified, and the Italian soldier looks at him and calls through of his soldiers and gets him arrested. But he gets him arrested to bring him safely out of the station. And when he brings him out of the station, he said, "Now run, please, run." So he saves his life. A Italian officer, and she was telling me, well, and since then I'm really related to Italy. I'm feeling very Italian, and this is why I'm talking so quite well Italian, because when I was 5 years, my grandfather told me, la tua bisnonna è di Lombardia.
And she will explain.
She will explain this. So she was very. But you imagine, I myself, I'm actually not Italian. I'm German. So when she was talking this story to me, I felt like, what will happen when I tell her that I'm not Italian, I'm German? So it was a very, very strange situation for me. And you feel the power of history as an individual in these sort of situations, because I'm the exactly opposite of a Nazi, of course, but I feel like I'm responsible as a German national for this historical burden. So I was telling her, actually, I'm German. And she was looking at me and said, oh, I have a lot of German friends. And then we started the conversation, and I said to her, you have to do this film, because this is a story, and this has to be a co-production with Italy. It can only be realized as a cooperation between the two countries. Then she told me that actually she had still another story, and that it's your turn probably too.
So Markus played a very important role in this film. So the second step after this event is that she wrote a scenario for a drama. And of course, she didn't want to write a scenario about her story with her grandfather exactly. Shows there is a bit of imagination in the way she wrote the new story. And her new story, drama story, was the story of an Italian officer falling in love with a French Jewish woman. So she wrote it, and then one day she went on the place her grandfather lived in the south of France, in a small village, Saint-Martin-Vésubie, and then she started researches about her grandfather, and then she went to see a woman who was a historian, and she talked to her about her own personal story and also about her scenario, and the woman said, but you know, what you're talking about is existing. I have the archives about a love story between an Italian officer and a Jewish woman. And they were together in this village in between 40 and 43. So here is the photograph, here is the letters about this story. So she was totally, surprised by that, and then she decided maybe not to make a fiction, but to make a documentary. So that's how it started.
So she started working on the documentary.
Yeah, she started working on the documentary. Then she went to see Mario, the son of this Italian officer. This man was about 70 years old, and he had more photographs for her, more letters. But not so many, but enough to make a film. So she came to me, and I am an independent producer, and I make a lot of historical films, and we started to develop a project for France Television, and then I met Massimo.
So
it was in June 19. It was
2019.
2019, 2 years ago, more than 2 years ago.
And Markus, you had another role because you found also the Italian producer, right? What did you do there?
Yes, of course, I knew very well that if I wanted to have any chance to convince Rai to enter the project, a condition was that there was an Italian production company involved, which is also, I think, natural, and I think it's a good thing. And also, I think it's important on the production side that Italian talent is involved in a story that is related to Italian reality in a way. So my first ambition was to find an Italian producer who would be available and interested and passionate and also experienced in cooperation with France, because I think it's not easy to co-produce. You have to have certain kind of skills and also certain, let's say, openness and ability to compromise or to co-develop and creatively decide how to tell this story. So I talked with various producers, and one of them, even at the beginning, I think a little bit reluctantly, but Massimo, you then entered the project, but it was not an easy decision, right, at the beginning for you?
Yes, I was completely fascinated by the project from the very beginning, because I met Audrey. It was in June or July 2018, 2018. She was in Piemonte to make some scouting, and we met in Torino, and she was pitching. She was not pitching. We were talking about this story, which was, to me, was incredible, because this part of the story, I don't know you guys, but to me was completely unknown. I had in mind that we as Italians, with the racial laws, we have been following the Nazi persecuting the Jewish. This was my knowledge of the story. And to know that, the same people outside, outside the border were doing this was something really, really, really unknown to me. So I was completely fascinated by the story. And more than this, we were also in a period of time, and this was also, in a way, at that time, also something that that Audrey was interested in. I don't know if you remember, but in that period, 3 years ago, there was also a sort of conflict between Italy and France on the border with Ventimiglia because of the question of migrants. And the migrants were crossing the Alps exactly with the same route that the film is about. So there was also this strange link between past and present, which was, I thought, this is a fantastic story. So I was in terms of, being involved personally, but the point was, listen, how can I as an Italian producer, I have not the strength to produce a film alone, because at that time, my first, in 2018, the cinema law was beginning at the very beginning, so the system of financing in Italy, there was a change, but still was a little bit, not in place, let's say. So I thought, okay, what can I do? Maybe I can go to Rai Storia, having few thousand as a pre-buy, and maybe a little bit of Piemonte Doc Film Fund, which is our regional fund, but this is not enough to make a movie. And so I told Audrey, listen, this story is beautiful, but you should find a French producer, and then we can really start thinking together. At that point, I think probably this was at the same time where you were, where you were.
Yeah.
And so this was the first thing. And then it took 1 year.
It took 1 year,
to
begin, really.
And the starting point, from my perspective, was in 2019. In Bari, there was this fantastic edition of the Italian dog screenings, where Rai, all the people from Rai, they came to the Italian dog screening, and basically with this idea that the new unity, documentary unity of Rai, would have been set up in a few months. Right?
Yeah, but it took longer.
Yeah.
It was still not existing. But what happened in Bari was that Rai staff, top executives, met with top executive for France Télévisions, Caroline Béhard, who is the responsible manager for documentary co-productions at France Télévisions. And there was a sort of institutional agreement that this and several other projects would be co-produced between the broadcasters, between the countries. This was a sort of engagement, and I think that made a sort of step forward in the sense that Rai took an engagement morally, not yet formally, because still the rules of Rai at that time were not allowing, for example, to anticipate budget spendings for a year after broadcasting, or before the broadcasting year. So it was not possible for Rai to engage in a project if the production delivery was beyond the budget year. That's still today it's a problem for documentary with Rai, and it's completely different in France and in other European countries where there's a possibility to spend over several years. But in Bari, there was a sort of understanding that Rai wanted to officially enter into co-production on this project and a couple of other ones.
And it was the same in France, that if this project was launched and was commissioned in France, it was of course, they liked the idea and the story, but they were very interested by the fact that it could be a co-production with Italy. So there was a kind of impulse, a new impulse, you know, because they wanted to help also Giulio to go ahead with this documentary organization, department, and this could be one of the first projects. So yeah, it went very quickly in France. So we launched the development first. So
was less quickly in Italy.
Less quickly in
Okay, a little bit
Italy.
more time, but
Patricia, the development in France means that the filmmaker has some money from l'aide à l'écriture to write.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Well, it's not the author; it's the producer has a development contract with the channel to help the producer to have a contract with the author first, so to go ahead in the development of the project, to write it, to make the research of archive, to make the research of the setting and everything, and also to try to launch to finance the film, to find other co-producers.
And this is the support that you got from Sensei.
Exactly.
Okay.
CNC and the channel.
And the channel.
And the channel.
Oh, both of them.
Yeah. Exactly.
Which is something very difficult for us to have in Italy.
Yeah.
That's why Massimo had to.
Yeah.
And Massimo was very brave, really, because he was alone at that time, and he engaged himself and committed himself with me.
Yeah, I mean, trusting this process of innovation in Rai, which at the end of the day I did. I was good because what happened really, but I mean, it's true that it took a while that the unity was really set up and operatively intervening in the project. So at that time we just had a first development agreement, and we started anyway working, taking the risk in a way, because we didn't have any support formally, and we decided to apply to the MIBACT. As an audiovisual work at the MIBACT. So we did together...
Audiovisual work for television.
For television, see.
Documentary for television.
So this was basically the new law allowed us for the first time to distinguish between cinema and television. And so we applied, of course, with this idea of having a co-production between the two public service. I thought this is a perfect project to really apply for in this new perspective of financing television work. So we did this application, and at that time, for instance, because the unity wasn't still operative, I applied to the MIBACT with a letter of support for France Television, but I didn't have any formal support or agreement from RAI, because the unity was still wasn't still active, and as we know, having a letter of interest from RAI has been always very difficult. Now, so far I've understood there is a new policy also in this term, but at that time was really difficult to have. So we applied with the support of France Television in a way, but we have to say also that we pitched together. You remember in Sunnyside. This was a very good point also.
Yeah, there was it was very important. There was a pitch in Sunnyside about the Italian-French co-production, and at this pitch was the woman of MIBAC. Yes. And so she heard our project, and she saw how important it was. Yeah. It was an international project.
And also Caroline Béal, during the presentation of the lineup of the year, it was mentioned in the project at the Sunnyside.
Exactly.
I mean, the project was, kind of...
And then a letter of RAI came in before the end of... before the decision of MIBAC.
Exactly, yeah. And then so this was the first step. And then...
and that was because Sunnyside is July, so that was July...
We applied at the end of... in December, I think, of 2019, so to the ministry, to the MIBAC, yes. Yeah. And the response arrived in April, around April. And at that time, RAI was confirming his involvement in the film, which at the beginning should have been a co-production, but at the end was a pre-buy.
Yes, and yes, this was the time when Rai Documentari started to become operational. And I'm really grateful to Giulio Gianmaria, who took this project in charge, although he had not been involved from the beginning. But it was clear that this was something that had a sufficient public service interest, and especially also a content that would relate us also to France Télévisions. Rai Documentari has a very strong interest and mission to internationalize. So if you are a producer and if you can, in a way, already come to us with a foreign broadcaster on board or interested in the project, that is a plus. And I think it's crucial today that public broadcasters work together on an international level. This is also a way to cope with the challenge that is posed by OTTs, by Netflix, by the others, who have budgets that are beyond anything that a public broadcaster alone could invest in projects. So this international cooperation is really fundamental. We are discussing this a lot in all sorts of international groups of broadcasters at the EBU level on a bilateral basis. And I think there's consensus that cooperation will be the future. Next week I will be in Milan at the Pre-Italia, and we have prepared one panel about is cooperation the future of media production? And the answer of course is yes. It's fundamental. So in this case, I think the really important point is that with this story, I think a relatively unknown historical fact, the fact that Italy was occupying a part of France, and the fact that Italian occupation in this part of France helped a lot of Jews to survive, because coming into this zone would mean for them to be safer than in the Vichy area and in the rest of, even in the rest of France. That, I think that is something that Italian viewers have to know, and I think it's the mission of Rai to help this to be known. And if this came through a love story and a personal story, I think it's still more efficient as a communication. In this sense, this story, for me, it's European public service, and it connects France and Italy, and if there's a little German help in this, I think it's even better.
It would be great.
Okay, so
then you just want something.
Yes.
The fact that we applied to the MIBACT was also I think the first moment in which we could really develop this project in terms of co-production, in terms of thinking about the creative team, putting together both from France and from Italy, also a creative team and a way to share the project in terms of editorially, but also in terms of technically.
Yeah, what he says, it's not only a financial co-production, it's really an editorial co-production where we share our skills, our know-how. For example, it was very important that we had a design to make about the village, because there was no photograph. So the director wanted some nice design,
animation. I mean, it's a 3D reconstruction on paper of the village.
And thanks to Massimo, the Audrey found a designer in Italy, in Torino, who was really great for the film. You will see. And we shared the expenses. And for example, normally Audrey was working with her own editor. And then she met the editor with whom he's working, usually, Marco, and it was a fantastic meeting. I mean, a fantastic rencontre.
Even from the distance, because they started the editing together in Torino, but then with COVID, they had to work separately for months.
Yeah.
So even from the distance, they could anyway manage it.
What was the budget you agreed on before starting the production?
The budget was 345,000 euros.
Okay.
Of course, if Italy hadn't been there, it would have been much less.
Of course.
It was
And so how was the division in percentage?
around 50,
maybe
58 for me and 42 for you, something like that %
Okay. Very good. And so we have on the French side the director.
Yes.
Who else?
All the shooting was
all
made
the shooting
by
because
a
it was
French
made
team.
in France.
Yeah.
Okay. And in the
The Italian part,
there
where
was
the
the editing.
editor and the animation part, and
And the archives.
the archives,
The
the
archives.
archives research, and also the part. Most of the archives are coming from the Italian Istituto Luce, and even other archives. But so the research part was made in Italy with an Italian researcher and archive producer, Ilaria Sbarese.
So it was well balanced
Yeah,
in some way, because you
exactly.
found the right way to put together.
Which is not so usual.
No.
In a co-production, normally can be very difficult, you know?
Yes. Well, we always had the problem as producers that we could bring so little to the project that then it was, you know, we couldn't even expect to pay Italian talent to be on the project, so we had to, you know, bring our little part and just wait and hope for the best. So this was a change, for sure, a change
It
in
was
the
more
landscape.
balanced,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay.
Maybe another point to make from the Italian side is the importance also of the regional film fund, right, in Piemonte. So it's not by chance that in the end it was a producer from Piemonte, from Torino, who did this, Massimo.
Yes, I mean, this is very important because, of course, I think we have one of the most ancient and performant film fund in our region, no? The Piemonte Film Fund, which is a very, very good fund supporting documentaries and producers, and of course was kind of natural, no? Because the story was just exactly on the border, so this was a perfect story for.
So just now, technically, so for the funding you had MIBACT,
We had
which now
the
is
first
called
MIB.
MIC.
Yes, MIC.
Then you
the second application that we did was at the Piemonte Film Fund, and this was with the letter from Rai. For the first time I had my first letter of interest from Rai, which was kind of considered this a trofeo, I don't know how to say.
A trophy.
Yeah, so it was really, I mean, of course it helped a lot. And then we had the agreement with Rai, so this
Rai is coming in with what percentage of the budget?
Oh, I don't know in terms of percentage. Can I say? I mean,
more or less. What is the percentage?
It was 40,000 euro.
So less than 15%.
Yeah.
15%.
Yeah. And then we have, of course, we succeed in having the tax credit also. Yeah,
and that's the Italian part.
The Italian part.
Rai, Piemonte, the regional fund, MIC, and tax credit.
Yes.
That is the fund. And instead in France?
And in France, you had France Television, so France 5. They invested 100,000 euros, which is around less than 30% of the budget. And then CNC, which is the same as MIC, they put 40-something thousand euros. And then we didn't have the region, strangely, but we had two foundations, la Fondation Mémorial de la Shoah and la Fondation Rothschild. They put together 20,000 euros. And then we have ProCirep, which is a little subsidy of 5,000 euros.
A sort of automatic...
no, it's not automatic
it's
at all.
not the automatic
no,
one.
It's very selective.
Okay.
And on our side, we could also use this agreement with the Istituto Luce, because there is a disagreement between DocKit and Istituto Luce. And because we are part of the association of the kit, we have a special agreements, which means a special rate with Istituto Luce, so we can access to the archives, of course, with a lower price. So this is also something that we could bring into the project, because a lot of archives is coming from the Luce. So this was another, let's say, another piece of the system. What I'm particularly proud of, if I can say, is that for the first time, I mean, we know that it's difficult for us as a producer in Italy to put together money and to be a real partner in co-production. So I think that, this shows how we have a real system in place now, and and the thing is to put together all the pieces. We have to get a little bit better in terms of systemical system, I would say. No? So to put all together, sometimes it's still a little bit difficult in terms of timing. But we have now, finally, after many years, we have a good system in Italy of financing. We have a system of financing
that can work,
which is important to underline.
Yeah. Is there anybody who would like to ask a question now on the financing? Because I would like to leave the second part to the content of the film. Any questions? Yeah, I'll come down. You keep the mascherina. I'll keep it.
Okay, I don't have any question for you, but I want to give you an information. As part of DocIT, I attended to the meetings with RAI to discuss on a new kind of letter, a letter of commitment. And RAI decided to develop this letter, and they approved a kind of letter of commitment that is very important because it's a letter with the amount that RAI wants to invest in the film. So this is very important because in a period of 6 months, you, producer, have the possibility to confirm your budget and to confirm the contract with RAI for the co-production. And you have to know at the same time that in case of co-production, it's possible with RAI to sign a development contract before to sign the co-production contract. In the case of Under the Volcano, the film I co-produced with RAI and France Television, we signed a first contract of development with an amount of 15,000 €, and later we signed the co-production agreement for a total budget of 100,000 €.
Wow, very interesting. So very good, thank you.
So this is the point. So from this you can understand the real value of having this unity, documentary unity in RAI now, you know, which really allows us, the producer, to basically to act as our friends in France, which was almost impossible.
Which was a
before,
dream.
You know.
Okay.
And again, I think RAI Documentari and RAI in general, as a public service organization, is feeling. We feel ourselves, and I think I can speak in terms also of RAI Documentari and quoting Giulio Giammaria, we feel ourselves part of a system where also the film commissions, the ministerial funds, everything is organically coming together. And I think, of course, as you say, it's extremely important to talk to each other and to find the good solutions and to cooperate on the projects that have a common base and common interest and common understanding. But I think public service in the future will be more and more this sort of organic cooperation of various organizations, and not only on the national level, but internationally. There might be even a sort of global level of public service cooperation. Actually, Caroline Behar talks about her initiatives as Global Doc, Global Documentary.
In fact, she tried to do the same than in drama. In drama, you had this big alliance, it's called alliance, of interest between European service public broadcasters, ZDF, RAI, France Television, and they did a lot of projects with this alliance. So she wanted to have the same for documentaries, because documentaries, of course, is very important, you know, for public service. It's the signature of the public service. In this kind of period of crisis, political crisis, you know, we need documentaries for citizens. So she tried to make this big international organization, Global Doc, and I think it's working now. I mean, it's starting to work, and for ZDF has signed something, and you did also. So,
but actually, it's not global; it's local, because we have all the levels from the region.
Right.
Also in France, there are two international co-production partners
Right.
in other parts of the world.
Good. Okay, so let's go now to the editorial part. Fast forward. The shooting is done. The editing is started. You have a rough cut.
And the COVID in the middle.
You have COVID in the middle, just a little problem to face. And how did the co-production work at this point? Because this is another delicate moment, you know. One has some expectations, maybe different to the other expectations on the other side. What happened here? How did it work? So the editing was done in Italy with Audrey working distance, right?
Yeah. Maybe before the editing, the first moment where they could have different point of views was about maybe the designs and the role of the designs, the role of animation in the film. Because at the beginning, remember, she had not a lot of photographs and archives. And one day she met the family of Mario, and he gave her an album, big album of photographs of that you can see in the film, lot of photographs, and also the diary of the main character of the film, Federico Strobino, the diary, military drug. So she had so many things to use that she really had a question about the animation. Was it so important, this animation? How could that? So we had a conversation, and honestly, we agreed about the solution.
Yeah. Because I mean, in this sense, this was an option in a way, because animation, of course, it costs. So I mean, so having all this material, these private archives, we could have done the film in a way even without. But the fact that we had the money from the from the movie, so we have more money in a way, and also we presented at that time, you know, a project with animation. We thought, listen, this is a chance. Let's do something with this, because it's not about. We have a real chance, and so we started. I remember Audrey in those days was in Torino, so we started, you know, thinking a little bit. We went we had a first Skype with Linda, which was this animator, and the good thing is that we have. I don't know if you know, but in Torino there is the animation sector of the Cinema del Centro Sperimentale. So the National School of Italian National School of Animation is in Torino, and so we have a young, very talented people, animators, right? And so we just explore a little bit this milieu, and we found some people who are very, very skilled.
So that was the first very creative collaboration between us. We had to change a little bit our mind, and it wasn't exactly the same animation than the beginning of the project, but it became something very creative, you will see in the film. And then the shooting, and then we started the editing.
Yeah.
She made a first version of the film with interviews, with
historians,
archives, photographs, a little bit of animation. And we had the first meeting with the French channel, France Television. And what was really incredible, they insisted to make the film more radical in its choice. That means they agreed that we eradicate the interviews. They thought the film without interviews would be stronger. And honestly,
well, I mean,
they were right.
Yes, we had a little bit this. I mean,
yeah,
we had a little bit this feeling.
We had this feeling, but we thought
before.
the channel wouldn't agree with that. You know, normally this kind of film there are interviews, you know, and we thought the story was so strong, so it was enough, you know. And then it was very helpful to have this France Television responsible with us, and the director did the second version, which was almost in the same
line.
Fantastic.
And Markus, were you involved in this period as well, or?
Well, in this period, I was involved through Massimo. We had regular talks, and he informed me about how it was going. And I still was in a situation that I had some sleepless nights because I was not sure that actually the contract was on the way, and you know it was more this sort of we have to fix it on a formal level. Yes, but we were discussing quite a lot about it, and then I think the important moment was when we had everything all right, and the contract was there, and we saw the rough cut. That was a crucial moment because, of course, stylistically, the film is not a typical, let's say, Italian prime or second prime time content item, I would say, because it's a film that is quite intimistic. It's radical in the choice to use photographs and archives only. This sort of first-person account, a love story mixed with the bigger historical histories representation. That's something we are not very used to. If it's history, if you watch programs on Rai Storia, there's of course a more traditional approach to having a mix of archive interviews, maybe reenactment, these kind of things. But it's very formatted in a way, that it's be available and interesting to the widest possible range of viewers interested in history in general. And I think it takes more of an engagement to engage with this story, which I think is typically French. In France, television has more also this sort of approach that you want to be also auteur when you make a history program. So it's something very individual stories. And I think we need that in Italy as well, but it was kind of an issue. It was kind of an issue because, of course, we and especially Duilio Gianmaria, we are responsible for creating an audience and really also reaching out to a lot of people. So we had discussions about that, and we asked ourselves, how can we achieve it with this film to be more interesting or to pull the Italian audience in it. And the idea was, it was the idea of Giulio to create a sort of introduction and to get Audrey to explain us a little bit why she made the film and the background, her personal motivation with her in video. And
yes, I mean, this was a brilliant idea, and at the beginning and also the end, we are going to show you, let's say that the Italian version now is the same. The film is the same, but we have an introduction and a different, and we add also an ending. And personally, I don't know. Then Patricia, you can say also your point of view. But I mean, I think that it really brings something in the film, because the film is totally the film itself is totally in the past. The story tells the story in the past. While we, in the introduction, in the ending, we bring also the present in the film. And it makes, to me, it makes a lot of emotion even more, you know, because you put in perspective this story, which is already a very strange and emotional. But with these two little intervention, you have no, there is a perspective of the film which is really adding something. So I thought that it, to me, was the perfect ending of our production story, let's say, you know, because we didn't have to change the film. We have to add these little things, but and all the film was gaining something from that. So.
And honestly, I was very suspicious at the beginning with this proposal of Giulio, and when I watched watched it, I was so moved, and I really wondering that we could do that in France too for certain film, for this kind of personal film. It's a plus-value, you know, added value, yeah. Really.
Okay, so let's see this the
introduction and the end
and the ending.
Yes.
Okay, which is, I think, a part that you did not see in the cinema here. Yeah. Hey?
No, maybe the presentation, you know, the introduction, yes, not the ending.
Not the ending, but the introduction was shown. Okay, so let's see if you can show the two extracts, the beginning and the ending, which are not part, let's say, of the main film, but were made specially as an introduction for the Italian audience of Rai. Let's put it that way.
Non mi ricordo da quando sono stata convinta di essere italiana. Forse dal momento che mio nonno mi ha raccontato la sua storia all'orecchio 33 anni fa. Durante la guerra, mio nonno Simon Gordon era rifugiato nella zona italiana, in un piccolo villaggio delle Alpi. Siccome era ebreo e membro della Resistenza, era ricercato dai tedeschi. Un giorno è in treno. Il treno entra nella stazione di Aix-les-Bains. Al binario ci sono decine di poliziotti pronti per un rastrellamento. Lo sguardo di mio nonno incrocia quello di un ufficiale italiano che capisce il pericolo. Senza dire una parola, quest'ultimo prende 2 soldati italiani che afferrano Simon e li fanno attraversare la stazione facendolo passare per prigioniero. Una volta all'esterno, l'ufficiale rilascia mio nonno, a cui ha appena salvato la vita, e gli sussurra: «Ora corri». Dopo la guerra, Simon lo ritroverà, diventeranno grandi amici. Da allora, il nostro legame con l'Italia ha qualcosa di viscerale. Non sapendo come rendergli omaggio, si è resa necessaria la leggenda delle radici familiari. Fin da bambina mi hanno insegnato a dire: «La mia bisnonna è di Lombardia». È tutto quello che sapevo dire. Da allora ho imparato un po' l'italiano, ho studiato storia, soprattutto quella di quel periodo, e cammino spesso tra le montagne in estate, là dove i miei nonni hanno passato una parte della guerra, là dove loro stessi hanno appreso questa lingua, comprando prosciutto e parmigiano al mercato nero. Anche se non c'è nessuna traccia di nazionalità italiana nella mia storia familiare, mi sento profondamente radicata alla frontiera franco-italiana, un piede da ciascun lato della montagna, la testa in Francia e il cuore in Italia. Ecco perché ho deciso di far rivivere questa storia dell'occupazione italiana a modo mio. Dapprima avevo immaginato una sceneggiatura di finzione, una storia d'amore tra un'ebrea russa e un ufficiale italiano. Poi ho incontrato la scrittrice Danielle Baudelaxin, che ha dedicato 20 anni a ripercorrere la storia degli ebrei in Francia, in un villaggio sotto l'occupazione italiana. Quando le ho raccontato la mia sceneggiatura, ha sorriso e mi ha detto: «Questa storia è davvero esistita e ho tutte le lettere d'amore». Ho aperto questa scatola che conteneva le lettere di Rima a Federico con emozione. Poi ho avuto la fortuna di incontrare Mario Strobino, il loro figlio, nato tra queste montagne italiane, e i suoi familiari che mi hanno aperto gli album di famiglia. E così è nato questo film. Ho scelto di raccontare la relazione tra gli italiani e gli ebrei durante l'occupazione italiana attraverso una storia d'amore, quella di Rima e Federico, sopravvissuti all'orrore di una guerra.
Mario, dopo molte incertezze, mi sono deciso a raccogliere tutto ciò che riguarda la tua nascita. I miei rapporti con tua madre e il mio paese. non so se tu leggerai un giorno queste pagine. Non hanno altro scopo che di ricondurti a me. Mio vivissimo desiderio è che il tuo spirito non venga mai turbato da questa lettura. Guardo all'avvenire con fiducia. Tu sei il mio avvenire. Solo su te ormai conto e sono certo che non rinnegherai il sangue di tuo padre. Nella vita gli imprevisti sono infiniti e dopo le più dure tempeste il sole ritorna a splendere più che mai luminoso nel cielo rasserenato.
L'amore, la vita, godere si fa. Quando ti vedo vicino le forze prepari che gira, rigira, giombina, l'amore, la vita, godere si fa. Quando ti vedo vicino le forze prepari che
Ti ricordi la prima volta che ti ho chiamato? Parlavamo e ad un certo punto mi sono resa conto che conoscevo tutti i nomi della tua famiglia come se fosse anche la mia famiglia. Ho pensato forse per lui è un po' strano questa persona che chiama e che conosce il nome della zia.
Sì, tu conosci molto meglio la mia vita, la mia famiglia di tutto questo periodo che io stesso, questo ne sono sicuro. Volevo un po' dimenticare tutto questo passato. So che una parte di me non aveva perdonato la loro separazione, ecco. E dunque tu hai avuto un po' un ruolo di psicanalista perché mi hai aiutato e mi fa molto bene di ricordarmi tutto questo periodo perché i più belli periodi tra la mia madre e il mio padre sono proprio quando io ero troppo piccolo per poter ricordarmelo, dunque mi ha fatto molto bene a questo livello. Dunque avevo più o meno dimenticato la forza dell'amore che ho per ognuno dei due. Finalmente mi accorgo adesso, mi ricordavo di più dell'odio che dell'amore. E adesso che ne parliamo, mi ricordo che c'era anche amore. Ok. È bene che alla fine, si può dire così, della mia vita, all'interno di me le cose si mettono a posto. Non so dirlo bene in italiano, comunque penso che si capirà.
Ma forse anche la cosa strana per me è che sai che ti ho raccontato che il mio nonno fu salvato da un ufficiale italiano durante la guerra che si chiamava Mario. E quando ho scoperto la storia del tuo padre ho avuto questa impressione un po' strana che tuo padre era l'ufficiale che aveva salvato il mio nonno. Quindi ho fatto un po' questo trasferimento sul tuo padre e adesso quando penso all'ufficiale che ci ha salvato vedo il viso di Federico perché siamo un po' legati con questa storia. Fa un po' come una grande famiglia.
E questi furono girati apposta una volta che è stato deciso di Oh, sorry, I should speak English.
The film was finished already, and we had the discussion with Rouelle and Markus, and we decided to do something, and so we have been filming after the editing was finished.
Okay, so this was really a part that you made specifically for, okay. And now you're going to bring it to France Télévisions.
I'd like to, really, because it's really so moving, you know. I think it's something we need as a viewer, as a spectateur.
Yeah, also I think it's important that Mario Strobini appears only here. It doesn't appear in the film. If you didn't see the film, it's important. So it's like also after watching all these black and white photographs with him at a certain point appearing as a small child, now you see him as an old man and with this sort of reflection about his family, also the suffering he had himself by the separation of his parents, because they separate at the end. The love story ends after the Jews flee to Italy. Many of the Jews from Saint-Martin are arrested. I think about 300 are deported from Italian soil because this is northern Italy, so it's the Repubblica di Salò, and the Germans take them away. But Rima survives, and the child survives. And so the couple doesn't survive as such, so they separate. And he suffers from it.
Yeah, and Mario, what we did is that we organized this session of shooting at the Musée de la Shoah in Paris, and Audrey showed the film to Mario for the first time. So he kind of, you know, this is the real moment where just after he just, you know, it was coming out from the watching of the film. So I think we could get this very important moment.
I think this is really interesting because it shows how from a co-production that is in some way has a lot of formalities behind it, you can also make a film that is a new way of looking at history. Because I remember when Lena, the director of the Biograph Film Festival, saw the film, she loved it, you know, and she's not a person that loves television documentaries, but she wanted it in the festival, and that's why the case study came out, because it's a really beautiful way of telling history.
Yeah.
So
it's a little story in the big history. That's what we like, you know. It's a
and
metaphor.
It also always shows that it's the way you tell the stories that is the most interesting part. Okay, unfortunately we have to close the session now. We have to leave this beautiful cinema by 1 o'clock. We had another extract on the animation, that the graphic that was made for the film, but unfortunately we cannot show it to you. You have to come to the next case study to see that, right? And
you can watch the film in September on Rai 3.
On Rai 3. It has found its position in Rai 3 in September. And in France Télévisions?
It will be on France 5.
On France 5?
Yeah.
And do you know when?
No, I don't know exactly, no.
Okay.
Probably at the same time.
Very good. Great. Thank you very much for sharing all this information with us.